Hello! We're going to make matzo ball soup. I've got a lot of my ingredients pre-prepared here, but I thought I'd show you what they were really quickly. First, we have seltzer water. We need a 1/4 cup of this. Olive oil. It said vegetable or chicken fat. I decided to use the olive oil. And matzo crackers. I've taken these matzo crackers, it took 3 of them, and I ground them up to make a cup of matzo meal. So in this bowl I have 2 tablespoons of olive oil and the seltzer water. And I'm now going to break in 4 eggs to this. One. That one almost got away. 2. 3. And my 4th egg did get away on me. Oh, there it is. 4. All right, so that's all our liquid. I'm now going to take a fork and whip up these eggs really quickly. And very quickly, I'm going to just toss in the matzo meal. We're going to put approximately a teaspoon, just a little less of salt in here. I'm not using a real teaspoon measuring because I just, it's not an exact, it's by a flavor. There we go. And then ground pepper. And just to taste, so you can make it as spicy or as bland as you want. You can put some herbs in this as well. I've seen recipes that include parsley and a couple of other green herbs. The recipe we're using today did not call for anything like that. Just trying to get enough pepper here out of the pepper mill. There we go, got a nice smell of pepper in the air, that should be enough. And I'm just gonna stir this up a little more again, just to incorporate. And this is already starting to hydrate and thicken. And I'm using my fingers, because eventually I'm gonna have to roll this with my hands anyways, just to make sure there's no lumps. There's still a little bit of lumpiness in there. And voila, that is our matzo mix. This is now going to sit and hydrate for a half hour, 45 minutes or so, while I cut up some chicken for our soup. This can go in just plain broth, but we like this in chicken soup. Okay, now that our matzo meal is soaking and hydrating, we're going to cut up 2 medium onions. And I've been told to talk a little bit about knife technique. So what I'm going to do is take the onion between my hands, and I've got the ends already cut off of these, and these have already been peeled off. And I'm taking it lengthwise between my fingers. So I'm not holding it at the 2 flat ends that I've cut off. I'm holding it on the sides. And I'm sticking my hand between my thumb and my fingers, and I'm just going to cut straight down into the onion to make 2 half spears. And I'm just placing those then on the cutting board, cut side down. We're going to do the same thing again with the second one here. Voila. And now I'm taking one of my halves, and this time I am putting my fingers on the 2 cut ends of that half that's cut. And I'm literally going to just take my knife and walk it every couple of centimeters, or maybe 5 millimeters actually, along, and make slices. If we wanted just slices, we would leave it like that, but instead I'm rotating it and following the same procedure all over again. And I've talked about this before, but if you keep your fingers holding the item and put the blade between your fingers and your thumb, you're not going to cut your fingers, because you know where your fingers are and you know where the blade is going, and you should always keep track of that. So I just have an empty bowl here. I'm just going to put the cut onion in there because we need the cutting board in a moment. And I just took the cutting board to the edge of the counter and just wiped right into the bowl underneath the edge. Okay, we'll just cut up these other halves really quickly now. Same way. Cut side down so it's not rolling around on us. Rotating it, and do the dice by cutting against the opposite cut, basically perpendicular to what we did before. And these pieces don't have to be perfect. They just have to be smaller than big chunky onion. Again, I'm going to grab my bowl, put it under the edge of the cutting board, and just wipe into the bowl. There we go. And you'll hear each one of those little snaps you're hearing for the blind audience is me cutting down, creating a slice, and now creating a dice on this onion. I can pick most of it up because it stayed together, stick it in my bowl, and wipe. You getting bored of this yet? Last half of an onion. Rotate. And this last cut is the hardest one, because as the onion is diced, the pieces move around on the cutting board. There we go. And all right, so now we have a really nice portion of chopped up onion here. Just gonna put that aside, and I'm gonna pull. Today we're using chicken breast. I normally prefer chicken thighs for this dish, but what we had in the freezer was chicken breast, and these are still a little frozen, but that's okay. I find they're easier to cut when they're frozen. And I put the flat side down on these chicken breasts, and these are huge, by the way. These are just ginormous chicken breasts. There, I hope you can see that really nicely there. And I put the flat side down so there's a nice curved round surface on top, and I'm going to literally just cut off a tip and just slice, just like our onion. The chicken moves around more because it's slimy. And then I'm going to take these slices I've created and cut them in half, because that's too big of a piece. And as I cut them in half, I'm putting them back into our bowl, and I'll take the other breasts out here. We have 3 breasts total, 2 smaller ones and 1 large one. Okay. And there's a little bit of liquid in the bowl there that the chicken was in. That's from the defrosting. They melted off quite a bit, so I will drain that off before we use it. And again, I'm just going through and making the slices I made more bite-sized and smaller. Some of them I'm cutting 3 times, some of them I'm cutting twice. You want them to be about 1 inch by 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches. You don't want them being too big. Think about putting it into your mouth. You want this to be something that you don't feel like you're struggling to put in your mouth and you're not going to bite off a piece of it. It's going to be in a soup spoon and you're going to need to put it in your mouth whole. So I'm just slicing up our smaller one now. And I'm keeping my fingers fairly close together on this one because I need to control the chicken breast, but I also need to make sure I know where my blade is at all times. I can't reach the entire length of the chicken breast, and slicing it the other direction doesn't work so well. So I'm just making sure I have a firm pressure on the chicken breast, pushing down and slicing. Oh, I'm going to be tricky here and do 3 slices at once. Yes, and that worked. Putting these in our bowl. Okay. And our last one. So the tip of this one was small enough, so I'm just going to put it right in the bowl, rotating, and I'm going to try again to just cut through all of these at once. It's a smaller breast than the original one, so voila! You'll see the skin didn't quite come apart there, so I just take it and you want chicken with skin on it for this dish because I think the skin and the fat layer underneath the skin adds a lot of flavor to the dish. You don't really want boneless, skinless. You want boneless, but not skinless. And that's all of our prep work we're gonna do for this. Meet me at the stove and let's get cooking. Welcome to the stove. So now it's time for us to cook the soup. And for those of you who don't want matzo balls, the rest of this recipe can be done independently of the matzo balls, and I'll tell you what part to leave out, i.e. adding the matzo balls. But we're going to use a large pot right now, and I'm just going to turn the heat on underneath it. Okay, there we go. And we're going to let that heat up just a second there. We're going to use the technique of waving our hand about 3 or 4 inches over top of where the top of the pot is. And we're waiting to feel the heat evenly. So if I put my hand in the dead center, I don't feel any heat just on my wrist and my fingertips. I want the heat to be fairly even on both. And that's how we know that our pot has gotten hot enough. Okay, still got a ways to go there. So in the meantime, I am going to take 2 cloves of garlic here because I forgot to do that with the onions. And I'm just going to show you my trick. I break the cloves off of the ball and I squeeze, but not too much, until I break the outer peel. Although in this case, it's okay if I break it because I'm going to be breaking these cloves up a bit. I like a lot of garlic in my dishes. Sometimes I've actually been known to put in whole cloves into this dish, but tonight we're only going to put 2 cloves of garlic in. So those will need to be broken up and cut into maybe, these are really large cloves of garlic. There we go, that's 1 peeled. And I'm going to check my pot before I peel the rest of it here. Not quite yet. This is a very heavy bottom pot, so it takes a while for it to come to temperature. So just break all off, the clove off of the main stem, and it turns out we've got 2 smaller cloves here, but that's okay. And again, I'm just squeezing it between both hands, thumb on one side, fingers on the other. Putting all the peels into my hand. Voila. And for the blind audience, you will know that you've got all the peel off because the texture of the garlic is a little rubbery. It's pretty smooth, but rubbery. It's papery until you get the peel off, and then that paper is the thing we want to go away, because frankly, getting a piece of peel in your dish, some people like it, I don't. I have heard of recipes that actually call for unpeeled garlic. I peel them if that's the case, because I find that papery texture in my meal is just not the thing. Okay, our pot is now at temperature. Just going to finish our last clove here. And we're going to put a big splash of olive oil into our pot. Here we go. Let that come to temperature. It takes very little time for the oil to come to temperature because, of course, the pot is already at temperature. And I'm just slicing, while we're waiting for the oil, I'm slicing the garlic cloves into our onion mix. See what happens when you forget things? You have to catch up later. Luckily, it didn't ruin our recipe because I still have lots of time. All right, so now I'm going to turn our heat down. The burner was up on full high. I'm turning it down intentionally before I add the chicken because I don't want it to splash up too much. I've drained all the liquid out of this, and in it goes. I'm just going to tip the bowl right into the pot. And I just grabbed a wooden spoon here, and I'm starting to stir this chicken around. If I hadn't had oil in there, it might not have sizzled as much, but it also would have stuck to the bottom of the pan. There we go. And all the initial water that was in there now has evaporated off. So now we have an even sizzle. We're going to leave this for about 5 minutes for it to brown. Come back and you'll see us some browned chicken. All right, so our chicken here is going to need to be stirred a little bit. Some of it is sticking, but it's actually doing quite well. And now I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit because it's not really browning. It's still very rubbery to the texture of my wooden spoon. This has been about 5 minutes, so I'm going to just turn the heat up now. We're not worried about getting a sizzle when we put anything in anymore because there's not just pure oil and water mixing. So you'll hear this. It's got a very bass, low sound. It's a lot of liquid in there. If I run my hand over top of the pot, I feel nothing but steam rising from this. All right, so our meat is starting to brown. I'm just going to put on a rubber glove here because I want to hold the pot while I check the texture of the chicken. And it's starting to get a little firmer. There's still a lot of liquid in there, but this is, again, frozen meat. That's what happens. But the texture is changing now. You want to make sure your meat is very browned because otherwise you get boiled chicken, and boiled meat is really, really disgusting. You'll hear the sound is changing. Okay, let's stir this around a bit more. And now the heat's back up on high, by the way. different change in sound. So I just want you to listen to this pot. You can hear the chicken sizzling, but you can also hear that liquid boiling away. So I'm not sure you can hear those notes. I hope you can, but there's some really nice, delicious sounds in there. This also smells really, really good. So now that we're getting that liquid boiling away, I'm gonna just stir it up. Yes, now we're getting really nicely browned chicken. Your chicken won't brown if there's too much liquid in the pot. There we go. As I run my hand over top, there's still a little bit of steam, but nowhere near as much as before. So it's time to now add our onions. And I'm literally just going to take our bowl and dump them in. And they're going to change the temperature of the pot. So our sound should change a little bit once I mix these in. There, we got a little bit more treble to that sound. And here's where I put in some pepper into the pot. I like a lot of pepper. I want my chicken soup to have a bit of a bite. And a couple of pinches of salt. And these are very generous pinches of salt, because when they say that you should give a cold chicken stock or chicken soup, it's soup and the chicken isn't the part that's actually important. It's the salt part of it, because the salt makes you thirsty and helps you drink and increase your electrolytes. There we go. Do you hear that lovely change in sound here now? I'm just stirring in the salt. That salt is also going to draw the last little bit of the liquid out of this. So now we're getting a real hiss and crackle. So that's our onions and garlic in there, and they're now softened now. You can tell that because we're getting like some Rice Krispie crackling sound. So it's time for our stock. And tonight I'm going to use a homemade stock. Sometimes we use store-bought, but we have lots of good homemade stock. And I can show that in another video if anybody requests it. And I'm literally just going to take this stock out of the Ziploc bag we froze it in and plop it into this pot. It is a big frozen chunk in a tiny Ziploc bag for the blind audience. There's a little bit of liquid in there because it has been melting on the side of the stove, but it's still one big giant frozen block. So you hear the way the sound changed there right away? Became more bass immediately. That's because we added liquid. And the smell coming out of here is caramelizing onions and chicken. It would be a much more chickeny smell if I'd used thighs. I find chicken breast is a little flavorless. I'm going to just take our onion bowl now and put some water in it. If I was using a store-bought stock, I would take the container of store-bought stock and fill it with water. But since The Ziploc bag is really hard to refill with water. I'm just going to take our onion bowl here, and I'm going to put 2 bowls of water in the pot. One. And you want, for a store-bought, say, Tetra Pak of stock, you want 1.5 of that of water. I mean, you don't want it too strong because stock can be pretty strong flavored. Okay. Now we're just going to wait for the water to come back up to temperature, and as it comes back up to temperature, our lump, and that's what it is right now, a big lump of frozen chicken stock will melt into this pot. We'll be back in about 4 or 5 minutes, add our other vegetables, and then make our matzos. All right, so our block of stock is about half melted. In my hand here I have 2 bay leaves from a bay tree in our garden, and I'm just going to fold these several times just to make them crack. And we're getting the nice smell from the bay. This is California Bay Laurel. You can buy this at a store, just dry bay leaves, but these are fresh from the garden. And we're just going to put those right into the soup. Oh, our little brick is almost dissolved here. So we're just waiting for this to come to a boil, and I'm going to help it along by putting a lid on it. Okay, so our brick of stock is now completely gone. The color of the liquid in the pot has changed. It's gotten a little darker. Still a beautiful, rich. I only know this because this is what they tell me. And got our onions, and they're dissolving in that stock, and the chicken is really lovely in there. We're going to start by adding a bunch of baby carrots. About 4 or 5 handfuls of baby carrots. Oh, and I just missed the stove. I just missed the pot. So I will grab those once we're done cooking and throw those ones out that I just landed in by the burner. There we go. It happens. We missed the pot. Have a baby carrot for me and one for Francis. We put the baby carrots in right now because they're the hardest vegetable that's going in here. And now I've grabbed my bowl of matzo mix. I want to show this to the camera here. You'll see it's gotten much, much thicker than it was before. It's a really lovely dough now. So I am literally going to move my spoon rest here, put it on the burner. And I have a disher here. Looks like a little ice cream scoop disher. I'm going to grab matzo, pat it into the disher, and then squeeze it out into my hand and roll the ball. And the reason I'm using the disher is because I want these to be about the same size. And just keep doing that now. I'll show you about 3 or 4 of them, and then I'll go off camera for the rest. Roll between my hands and drop them into the stock. All right, we'll come back. All right, so here's our pot. I turned the burner down because I was getting a little hot to mix up the matzos over top of the pot. So I'm just going to turn it up again now. I'm giving it a quick stir, but I don't want to disturb the matzos too much because they will crumble at this point. And now what we're going to do is put the lid on. And we'll see you back here in 20 minutes to do the final phase of our matzo ball soup. All right, so our timer just went off, and I'm going to pull the lid and reveal our matzo ball soup. Check this here. You'll see the balls are a little bigger now. They've puffed out nicely. And all we're going to do now is add some frozen vegetables. So I've just got some mixed frozen vegetables here. This actually has some carrots in it already, but these carrots have been pre-cooked. And I'm just going to put like about, I'd say 2 cups of frozen vegetables in. These are green beans, corn, and carrots. You can really put almost anything in you like. I wouldn't put potato in this because there's a lot of starch, but otherwise you pretty much got a free range. And you'll notice as I'm putting them in, the water has started to stop bubbling away as aggressively. I'm just going to pour maybe this big chunk here of frozen and just push it in there. Put the lid in, the lid on, and within 4 minutes we will have soup. All right, so it's been a couple minutes now. All we really wanted to do is make sure that those vegetables were heated up. I'm going to take our lid off. This is bubbling really aggressively now. I'm just going to make sure everything gets stirred up here a little bit. Should probably put a little bit more water in this than I did, but we're good. And I'm going to just turn off our burner now, and I will dish some out for you. Just going to grab a giant soup ladle here. And this is a giant soup ladle. And just literally get some liquid, get some vegetables, meat, scooping all at once. Put 2 ladles into the bowl. And voila, a wonderful bowl of chunky chicken with vegetable matzo ball soup. Please press subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments, and ask for any recipes you might want. Thank you.